Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
My dear friends, welcome to the Encounter program. I am your host, Mark Kimpland, the pastor at the Endwell United Methodist Church. Today for us, right around Thanksgiving time, is a homecoming for our guest this morning. I am thrilled that the Reverend Rachel Helgeson, who is now the Director of Hospital Chaplaincy through the Broome County Council of Churches, is our guest this morning. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's so good to be back and to be with you and to revisit with friends.
Awesome. This is not new surroundings for you, and we thank you for the service that you had with the Encounter program, and maybe down the road we'll see what happens.
You never know, right?
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Yes, absolutely. Well, Rachel, your life has had a transition from the local church and being a pastor of a local church to the chaplaincy, and I read that a few months ago, and I got excited for you about that, but wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit. How did this all come about in regards to your call and your life?
Yeah, so I was serving, many may know, at Northminster Presbyterian Church as the lead pastor there. And I'd taken on part-time a chaplaincy position through the Broome County Council of Churches. Some things in my own life precipitated that, and it was like, oh, well, this is ministry, so it seems like a good addition. And but nothing I felt like, oh, this is going to turn into something else. This was just like, this is for a season, and we'll do this for a season, and then sort that out when God calls it. But God is wily, and the Holy Spirit does weird things.
Wily. I never heard that put that way.
Yeah.
That's good.
Something that I thought I was just sort of like doing because I had the gifts for it turned into something a little bit more. Bill, who was a lead chaplain at the time, he and his family decided that they were going to move to Florida, something that they had on their heart for a long time, and they decided the time was now because they wanted to do that before they retired, while they were able to do things. So, so he left the position as the lead chaplain at UHS Hospital, and so then this position came open, and it was opened up to all of the current chaplains and to the area to if somebody wanted to do it, and just kept getting these little signs that maybe I should apply for it, and I was approached about it, but I was like, this isn't what I signed up for, right?
Right. Yeah.
I just was doing this for part-time, and sometimes God has a way of like just dropping things in and doing unexpected things, and the more that I prayed about it, the more that I discerned it. That's a fancy way of saying thinking about it, listening to what God's saying to you. It just seemed like, well, I'll at least see and apply and see what happens, but no pressure, because you can always still say no when you apply, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And I applied, and folks were excited at the hospital, and folks were excited at the Broome County Council of Churches, and folks that were part of different things that it just seemed to make sense. And I prayed about it some more, and it was a big decision because it's not what I had envisioned for my own ministry or my own life. Because it is a switch. And so, but it was a call. In my tradition, Reformed tradition, and I know a lot of Christian traditions, call is very much part of what we think about when we don't just talk about a job being a job.
Right.
If it's a call, there's something more to it. It means God's doing something in that and reshaping us and putting us in a place that maybe we didn't expect ourselves to be, but right where God needs us and wants us to be. So. So I was called to the position as the Director of Hospital Chaplaincy. It's a lead chaplain, and And I started full-time November 1st, and so my last Sunday with Northminster was mid-October.
Okay.
And they sent a beautiful sending, and many were sad that I was leaving, but in the same breath, I heard so many of them say to me, we're sad for us, but we are happy for our community, and we're happy for you.
Yes.
And isn't that like the cloud of witnesses that
Yes,
you just sort
yes, yes.
So I am grateful to Northminster for seeing who I am in my own call, and also sending me out into the world with their own sadness about it, but but recognizing that God is still doing a new thing for them and for me, and that it doesn't change that we're brothers and sisters in faith, but that we are just now on different paths. And, So that's sort of where that's all started, as sort of a seed.
Two thoughts that come to mind before I get to the other stuff here.
Sure.
that I found intriguing. How have you seen God preparing you for this? Prior to, like, the pieces are coming together here, or this is how the pieces have come together. How can you speak on that just a little bit as to how?
It's interesting because I was required to take 1 unit of CPE when I was in seminary, which is called Clinical Pastoral Education. And I did that at University of Louisville Hospital, which is a high trauma hospital. And I remember liking it, which was, most of my classmates were like, what? And the hospital there actually hired me. It was the first time they had hired a seminarian to stay on, and I worked in the behavioral health wings to teach spirituality classes.
Wow.
So I did that during seminary, and I was the only seminary student that did that, and I just was like, boop-a-doop, I didn't really think much about it, but now in hindsight, I'm like, and then my first call was in Texas, and as a Lilly pastoral resident, which was in a big church. It's a training ground. In some traditions, they call that an assistant pastor type position. But while I was there, one of the head chaplains at Texas Health was a member at that church, and he constantly would bring me to all sorts of like workshops and things at Baylor and Texas Health. And I still have I kept all that information. You know how pastors keep stuff and they throw stuff away? That's, I know, a secret we're not supposed to maybe tell, but I did keep those things, which was a surprise to me.
Yes.
And then my next call was in Southern Illinois, and I was asked to be on the ethics committee at the hospital there.
Okay.
And I served as a volunteer chaplain there because it was a small community.
Yes.
So looking back,
there's some layers there.
People kept asking me to do these things, and I've always loved pastoral care. Even in my parish ministry stuff, that has always been like one of the things that I just found myself gravitating towards. And people would say to me, like, wow, you do a really good funeral, like, which is a weird thing to say, in the real world, but but there is something to that passage and transition of time, that is sacred and holy, and I think a lot of times we want to skirt away from that, but, I think, in hindsight, it's not a surprise, but in the present, that's not where I thought I saw myself in this season, or even in my own call. I saw myself on the trajectory of parish ministry, continuing to do that. And that doesn't mean that that's not going to still happen some way, but but at this season, this is definitely where God is calling.
So the next logical question then would be, in this season, how has that transition come together? How you have a unique perspective from the local church to do what you're doing now. I don't have that perspective. I've been in the local church forever and a day. So can you tell me about that transition? What do you miss? If you want to get into what you don't miss, that's okay too. But how has that transition been?
The rhythm is different. That has been something that I've been learning. So I'm included in different meetings at the hospital. I'm also included in different meetings at Broome County Council of Churches. So from that perspective, that feels familiar to me. From that parish ministry has lots of different meetings and things that we plan things and think about things. One of the things that's been a surprise to me, though, hospital staff meetings are very succinct. They're like, we started this time and we are done at 15 minutes later, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But sometimes I do miss those unpacking conversations, you know?
Sure.
Like, oh, I just want to go on this side note for a minute because I thought about something. And there's just not time to do that. And so it's a kind of interesting difference and a twinge to that. But the other thing I do is go and visit people. They're called rounds, and I get to go around and just visit with folks. And the nice thing about it is it's never about quantity, it's about quality. So a ministry of presence, just sitting and listening and being present with people. And I get to visit with all sorts of different types of people. Some people who will never walk through the doors of a church. Some people who may even say that they have no faith tradition at all. But when you're in a hospital situation and life has thrown all sorts of things at you, you just need somebody to visit with you and be present in your own personhood. And I fully believe that healing is not a one-dimensional thing. It's not about just the medicine, although it's part of it. It's not just about the science, although that is part of it. And I think a lot of times we forget about spirituality, and I think that's part of it, and one of the ones that usually gets forgotten. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other, but I would say that together. And when we can look at somebody as a whole human being, and we include their spirituality in that, it makes a huge difference. It really does.
Friends, I am thrilled that our guest today is the Reverend Rachel Helgeson, the Director of Hospital Chaplaincy through the Broome County Council of Churches. If you had to, and maybe there is a mission or a vision statement or something about chaplaincy ministry or being a chaplain, can you dissect that for us as to, maybe there is that thing out there, maybe there's not, but to you, what is it? I mean, if you had to really coin it and say, chaplaincy ministry is this, or maybe it's a few thises.
Yeah, I would say, if I were to coin it down to like a soundbite, which I think sound bites have limitations, but if I were, just to like remember a ministry of presence.
Okay.
That would be my soundbite for it.
Yes.
Now I would unpack that a lot more. And my chaplain team, actually, we just came up with one, and I'm not good at remembering things off the top of my head, but some of the things that we talked about were just to meet people where they are on their journey in life, to meet them and to meet them there, to listen to them, to support them as appropriate, to help them connect if they have a faith community, to connect them to their faith communities in that moment, but to also honor what will be part of who they are, and regardless of what their background, regardless of all the things that, the isms that we put on people or the labels that we put on folks, to just be able to be present with them. So there's more to it than that, but that would be the unpacking part that I would say is we're there on the journey with folks in a moment, knowing that we're not going to necessarily see them before, and we may not see them afterwards, but we're there in that moment to be present with them on their journey.
Now, do you have, and this is kind of from a pastor's standpoint, thinking about what it is that you are doing and such, do you know that going into that visit, a little bit about their spirituality, or is it, I'm talking with Mr. Jones, Mrs. Jones, whatever it is, and they'll reveal that, or maybe not reveal that to you? How much history do you have as you enter into that sacred space?
It depends.
Okay.
So sometimes, because sometimes people ask us specifically to come in, and if we have that information, then usually we have more information about who they are, what they're about, what they're asking for, at least from a basic standpoint. But we do have volunteers who volunteer at the hospital, and they don't have any information. They walk in, they have room numbers of the wings that they go into, and they're encouraged to go into each room. Unless somebody specifically asks for a no visit, we honor that too.
Okay, sure.
But they go in, they see their name, they say, hi, I'm from the spiritual care department, but wherever you are on your journey, I'm here to walk with you on that, or whatever you're feeling comfortable. And one of my volunteers, Bob Prentice, is really fantastic at this, is he just, he walks in and just talks about whatever he's thinking about. And like one guy he talked to about a bike, another guy he talked to about the country, and I have another volunteer, John Snyder, who who's really good about like connecting with people right before he knows. One of the teams that he works with is a palliative care team at Binghamton General, and he's very good at like just sitting with them and also getting the family to work out some stuff that they hadn't figured out, because grief comes up in such a funny, weird way. And I would say that too about my staff chaplains, Ade and Greg and Paul. They're very good in different ways. Greg just seems to know everybody in the community. So he can connect with people about like, oh, you're related to, or you did this, because his previous position was as a bus driver. So he literally knows everybody. Ade is a professor, and so he connects with people especially that are looking for like a way to see their spirituality in their life from the margins, but also from an intellectual standpoint. And Paul was an engineer, so he's able to think. So I have very different folks that are on my team.
Yes. Oh, that's exciting. That's great.
Yeah.
So what is your role then? I was glad you were talking about volunteers and your staff, so that intrigued me as to your role in this position. What is it? I don't want to call it a job description, but for the lack of a better word, what is the role then that you have?
So I'm a connector between the Broome County Council of Churches and the hospital, UHS, so both at Binghamton General and Wilson. We always have a chaplain on staff, and I'm in charge of making sure that we have a staff chaplain on staff. So if there's an emergency, a nurse or a social worker or member on staff can contact us. Quite often we get phone calls from some of our Catholic friends about doing anointing. It used to be called last rites, but now it's anointing of the sick. But we'll also get phone calls for other clergy from their traditions to say, can you please contact my pastor? Because that helps the staff so they're not having to track down people. And sometimes, as you know, clergy are doing other things, so if we know the tradition they're from and if their pastor's unavailable, we'll try to find somebody else to help. But a chaplain's also available to be that person if they're comfortable with that. So that's part of it. I'm also actively always recruiting for volunteers. So if you've been thinking about my faith tradition, and we would love for people to come and join us. There's a process, of course, like you have to interview with the volunteer part from UHS, but then you get to meet with me and we get to talk about it, and then you shadow with somebody. And so if that's something that's been on somebody's heart, please reach out to either Broome County Council of Churches or the volunteer team at UHS, and they'll connect you with me eventually. So we'd love to have you join us. I'm always looking for more representation in different faith traditions. Currently I'm Presbyterian, there's Methodist, actually, they're Free Methodist. I have three Free Methodists. It was hard to say that. And I have some Roman Catholic folks and Pentecostal. So as you can hear, those are all from Christian denominations. So, but we are not limited to that. So if you're from another faith tradition, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, and you've been thinking about this, then great. If you're from one that's already been represented, or we would love for you to join us too. Those are not limitations. I think the more that people can start to meet people, and if it's a call for you, I always come back to that. That we can try to help you meet people where they are. So that's a part of my job too. And then other things like this, being able to talk about what chaplaincy is, because quite often if you watch a movie, especially those medical movies, you're like, oh, there's a trauma, something's happening, and then you see all these people come in, and I'm always like, where's the chaplain? And usually there's like a priest of some sort, and I'm like, they must not know how complicated it is to get clergy. There's usually a chaplain that's there first. But I think that's probably true. Is there's an unsung hero part about chaplains, is that we're not there to make a big fuss about being there. We're there to be with people right where they're at. So in some ways, maybe Hollywood's got it right. We're not supposed to be the one that's the main character in that situation. We're there to help people where they are.
Usually you see the priest walking by or getting mowed over by the gurney or something.
Exactly. And I'm always like, wow, I don't know any priest that would want to do that. I just don't know any clergy folks that are excited about that part.
Yes. Friends, I am thrilled to have the Reverend Rachel Helgeson, the Director of Hospital Chaplaincy through the Broome County Council of Churches, as our I want to give you time to, and you've done a little bit, and if you need to do more, by all means, about your staff. I mean, we are as good as our staffs are in such things. Anything you want to share about them and what they do, and just kind of give a shout out to them and such, please, please do that.
I'm so happy with my staff, honestly. And we are looking for one more staff member right now. We're in the process of finding someone to join us for just 8 hours a week, and they'd be on call once a week. On call, it means that you have your phone on, and you might get called into the hospital. And for some people that's really exciting, and for other people that seems stressful. But I will say to you that it's always a meaningful moment. So currently, it's me on our staff part, Ade, and Paul and Greg, and my contract is through the Broome County Council of Churches. Their contract is through the Diocese of Syracuse. And this other position that will be coming will be through the Broome County Council of Churches. So we try to have a balance through that, which is interesting, though, that none of us are actually. We work at UHS. We're part of that, but we also are hired through other entities, and there's a kind of a goodness about that because it allows us some space to be able to be present with people without getting in all the entanglements, if you know what I mean.
Yes, that's intriguing. Yeah. There's some autonomy there and some freedom and flexibility there then, which is good.
And the Broome County Council of Churches has had a relationship like this for, Joe Solopek would probably know the exact numbers, but it's been for quite some time, over 50 years. So there's been other folks who've been before me that have placed this. The last lead chaplain was Bill, who was through the Diocese of Syracuse, and Father Corey was before him in that position, and there was Barbara, who was before through the Broome County Council of Churches. So there's been there's been different seasons of who has been in that position too. If you work in parish ministry, sometimes we talk about like how in joint churches, like if it's a Methodist UCC church, they'll switch which pastor it is. So it's sort of the same thing for the lead chaplain.
Yes. I always like to ask this question, Rachel. Now that you're in this season of your life and faithfully fulfilling this new call, which has probably been a call in your heart for a while, and moving through all the pieces that have brought you to this point, what excites you about it? What gets you out of bed in the morning and to start a new day as the Director of Hospital Chaplaincy?
That's a fantastic question. Meeting people and having them open their hearts and share things that their family may or may not know, or their friends may or may not know, things that they've been worried about or holding on to, and being invited into that sacred space with them. And I would say that not just for patients, I've had that experience with staff members. I've had that experience with family members who have not had a moment to be able to unpack whatever that is. And Barbara Brown Taylor talks about this, where she says the thin places between heaven and earth. And I've seen so many thin places in the hospital, and being invited into them without judgment. And I just wish that the rest of the world could experience that a little bit. The joy of how complicated and hard things can be, and all of that gets pushed away for just a moment to see what's really important, to see where God is in the midst of it, to see who we are in the midst of it, and not to get entangled in all of the junk, and not to say that there isn't difficult moments. For sure, there come into a lot of difficult moments, but to be invited into that. When a family is grieving their loved one who's just died, or someone's gotten a diagnosis that they're unsure about, or they're getting to go home and they're not sure, they're excited about that, but but they also know that brings on new questions, right? To be invited into that and to say, I'm here with you and I see you. And the thing that always surprises me the most, in the Christian faith, we talk about the Imago Dei, being created in the image of God. How many people have told me that they've never thought about that or nobody's told them that they're created in the image of God. And I think maybe we could do a little better at that too.
Yeah.
Just to see people in those quiet, unsuspecting moments.
Yeah.
It's kind of brought a different perspective to me in my regular life when I go out and about. Like, I'll be on the phone to do something for whatever, and they're always like, wow, you're being really patient. I'm like, I'm just grateful that you're helping me. And sometimes I think we forget that.
Yes.
Our own humanity and the humanity of others.
Yes. Yeah. And to truly see it.
Yes.
And what that means, yeah.
It's so ordinary.
Yes.
And we forget about the ordinary, but when we allow the ordinary to creep in, and it becomes extraordinary.
Yes, yeah. But that is truly, as you described it, a sacred, holy invitation to be present in that moment with them. This somewhat total stranger who now becomes grace. In whatever way that works out, yeah.
And it's always different, because it depends who the person is, what the situation is. It's always going to be different.
Yeah. What have you learned along the way? What have you learned about this role? Whether its importance, its sacredness. Is there something that you can kind of leave us with that you've learned about doing what you do day to day and looking forward to the days ahead? Because that's kind of where we are right now, to the days ahead. But is there something specific that you've learned, or an epiphany of some kind that's been revealed to you?
Not to walk in with judgment. Because when you do, when you walk in with judgment into a conversation, into a relationship, you've already set the stage for what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you can, it's not to say you can't prepare yourself. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
But to walk in with an open heart, an open mind, an open soul, and to let the Holy Spirit dwell in that, something beautiful always comes out of it.
Yeah.
And always surprises me. It's when I try to prepare over too much and make the judgment calls before I've even done anything that things go sideways.
Yeah, that can wreck a holy moment in a minute, can't it?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Rachel, I have been thrilled throughout this time. It's good to reconnect with you, and I want to give you the last word if you want to just share with our viewers and listeners how they might be able to get involved in such things. One more time, that would be great.
Thank you. So if this really intrigued you and you've been on your heart been wondering, how can I help at the hospital, we would love for you to try to discern if this is part of your own calling. Contact the UHS. You can go through the volunteer system. Jean Carangelo is the head volunteer person, and she can get you connected there. Or you can contact the Broome County Council of Churches through Jessica or Joe Selipek, and they'll connect you to me, and we'll get you on the path. But we would love for you to join us, and if you're just interested in learning a little bit more, please reach out. We would love that as well. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Friends, again, our guest has been the Reverend Rachel Helgeson, the current Director of Hospital Chaplaincy through the Broome County Council of Churches. You are a gift, and they are in good hands. So God bless you. God bless your work. And friends, have an awesome day, and be blessed.